Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Kamajumba Lot 12 wash processed Rwanda from Coffee Wrights. And there's the cup right there. And Coffee Wrights, based out of Tokyo, Japan. And I'm currently at a park nearby their Taito City location, and this is my first time ever trying this coffee roaster, as they're another coffee roaster I'd never heard of before this trip, but was suggested to me by the barista over at Sneet. So I greatly appreciate this suggestion, as this looks like another promising coffee roaster. So some of the background notes about Coffee Wrights is that their shop does offer every single one of their current coffees as a hand brew option, and they are all made with the Klita, which I think is the first time we've actually had a coffee served to us with the Klita, so that is promising. In addition to that, they are another coffee roaster that uses the Probat, and they're another coffee roaster that also roasts on the lighter side of things relative to some of the other experiences I had had in Japan. They are on a similar level to the Onibus coffees as well as the Sneak coffees that I'd had, which once again is really promising because it does show a lot of modern approach to current Japanese coffee roasters. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. And with this coffee, I did ask the barista what his favorite offering is currently, and he said that this Rwanda was his pick. So I was quite excited because we have not reviewed a Rwanda up to this point. So let's go ahead and discuss this coffee real quick. And what I did notice was a very strong candied pear aspect right at the forefront of this, and there was an abundance of sugary sweetness. So immediately from the first sip of this coffee, I couldn't help but notice that it was offering a lot of the characteristics that I do hope for from Probat-based coffees. And in addition to that, given the slightly more light profile of this, it felt very much like a kind of more modern approach to the Probat coffees, which is something that I always really appreciate. Not necessarily saying that this is an overly light coffee, but relative to my expectations, once again, we have a slightly more lighter profiled coffee that's continuing to offer a lot of those attributes and characteristics. They're another coffee roaster that did give me this little chart right here. I'll show you guys. This is pretty common in Japan, where they kind of give you an idea of not just the notes they have, but also the levels and scores that they are getting from these coffees. And I'll go ahead and discuss how my experiences might have compared and contrasted with their own. But one of the things I did find interesting was that chestnut note. I've never seen that before, but it did offer a nice little nutty quality to it. I'm trying to pull up my tasting wheel right here, and we have some birds making some noise in the background, but let me go ahead and put up the tasting wheel, at least on the screen, so you can see what I'm getting while I'm pulling it up. All right, and as I'm looking at our notes, we have quite a few level 4s. Let's go through those, and we will start with the cleanliness, level 4. Yes, this I would actually say is one of the cleaner coffees we've experienced up to this point, and I do have to give them massive credit. Oftentimes, Rwandan coffees can be a little lacking in overall, just, let's say, vibrancy and sweetness, but this one by no means was lacking that, and as far as the clarity goes, it had a very nice and defined profile to it. I rarely do experience a lot of pear-like attributes in coffees, but this one right here had a very nice caramelized pear component to it, which I greatly appreciate. I want to attribute that to the Probat because a lot of people know just how much I love the Probat. All right, we have the finish, level 4. Yes, I'm trying to see if they noted that. They didn't, but the finish itself, yeah, it does have a nice bit of that caramelized finish, that's candy sweetness to it. I think one of the other notes I had listed on here is cane sugar. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a pretty sugary coffee, especially for Rwanda. I do have to say it's, once again, a much more sweet experience relative to Rwandan coffees that I've had in quite a while. Sweetness level 4. Yes, that's something that I mentioned. It just seems to have a lot of that Probat-like sweetness to it, that caramelized aspect, that candied aspect, and that sugary aspect, all in notable abundance. So I'm really happy with the sweetness, one of the more enjoyable, sweeter aspects of a coffee that I have experienced. Acidity, level 4. Yes, there's a nice bit of brightness to it, some of that classic Rwandan brightness. I do tend to experience a lot more of the acidity when it comes to these African coffees. So that's definitely there, a notable amount of that. Citrus fruit, level 4. Yes, I'm taking a quick look on here as to what they have. They just have a generic citrus note on here. Honestly, for me, I feel like it's got a little bit more definition to that, but it's a little bit more of a sweeter citric aspect, so a little bit more of a candied lemon to it as well. Given that this coffee just feels pretty candied in general, then there's a lot of those attributes that I'm going to be listing on here in this tasting wheel. And then caramel, level 4. That's what I'm referring to exactly, as it has so many of those Probat-like characteristics, most specifically that caramelized sweetness. So that right there, those are the two things I would say are in the most notable abundance. And again, as I'm looking at their little card here, I can't help but note the strong similarities we have, at least in terms of the candied attributes to it. One other thing I should note is that I also tried their natural processed Honduran coffee. I just tried a sample of it, and that one also seems to offer a lot of those candied aspects. So I think that they're doing a really nice job in that regard. We have a handful of level 3s. We will start with the Florality level 3. Yes, I wonder, again, they don't have anything on that listed on here. Let me take one more sip. I kind of want to see that. Because I felt like there was an ever so slight kind of red florality to this one. And as I'm kind of taking that sip again, I can experience that same thing, as it's a little bit more of a rosy quality to it. Not an overly herbal like hibiscus component, but even then, it's still got some really nice and surprising florality. Also pretty sweet and candied. Spice, level 3, yes. And I think that's a little bit more in line with previous experiences from Rwandan coffees, as it does have a nice little spice-like quality to it. Saltiness, level 3. Yes, that chestnut that they have listed on here, I'm experiencing some nutty qualities to it. I don't know if I would go as far as to say it's extremely in line with chestnut, but I actually don't eat a whole lot of chestnuts, don't exactly know what they taste like. There's a nice little notable nutty quality to it. Berry fruit, level 3. Yes, and those are some of those tart berry characteristics that I do experience from Rwandan coffees, similar to Kenyan coffees in general, so that's where the berry fruit comes into play. And then I feel like there are two things actually worth noting, because they put on here that the bitterness is at a level 1, so the minimum amount of bitterness. I disagree with that. And that's mostly because the citrus that's within this coffee is ever so slightly bitter. Not to say overly bitter by any means, but even then it's got a slight bit of bitterness. So that's why I scored it at a level 2. And last thing worth discussing is the body at a level 2, which they have listed 3 out of 8, so a little bit more medium bodied. And I could kind of see that as I was hovering between a 2 and a 3 myself. But I opted for a 2, as I feel like this coffee just had a slightly lighter body than I might have expected. But even then, I think that what they have on their notes are pretty similar to mine as well. So I feel like we both got a pretty similar experience with this coffee. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. Honestly, this is probably the one that surprised me the most, given that I had no expectations for this coffee roaster going into it. Even when you hear positive things, it's one thing to actually go in there and experience a good thing, as opposed to going in there and being like, they like the coffee shop for different reasons than I might like. This one right here, I understand why they like it. It offers a lot of the characteristics that I look for. As far as Rwandan coffees go, honestly, this is one of the best Rwandan coffees I've had in quite a while, which is a huge testament to them. That goes to show that this coffee roaster might be a little bit of a hidden gem, as since I've never heard of it, I assume a lot of people have never heard of it, and I'm continuing to find these hidden gems around Japan, which goes to show that just ask your baristas no matter where you are, as they seem to know the coffee scene really well. I really appreciate this recommendation. I was very impressed with this coffee, as well as this coffee roaster, at least relative to a lot of the expectations I had, so massive credit to them on this one. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to, somebody like myself. This is for a Probat drinker, as it offers so many of those candied, vibrant Probat-like experiences in the terms of the sweeter aspects of them. That candied pear is really, really nice, and I do appreciate the fact that they have nut list on here, because it's probably one of the best, most well-defined kind of pear-like attributes to a coffee that I've ever experienced from anyone. So that in itself is really nice. The sugary aspects, the caramelized aspects, all of those notable within this coffee, as well as the citrus, which I didn't have too many issues with. The berry-like quality, some slight Kenyan characteristics to it. It gives a little bit more depth in general. So this one had some really nice depth, and that's even more credit that I wanted to give to this coffee roaster. I think for the most part, I'll leave this one at that. If you've by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. Or if you've tried this coffee roaster, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of them as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Kamajumba Lot 12 Wash Processed Rwanda from Coffee Wrights. Thank you for watching.